Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time of Wes Craven's directorial debut, The Last House on the Left. 1972 film, which was written and directed by Wes Craven. He also had a hand in editing the film. And this is a movie that, honestly, I was really disappointed by this film, considering its reputation as being one of the most legendary, groundbreaking horror films of all time. I really didn't think it was that great, to be honest. I don't even think it was one of Wes's best films. There was a lot there that I could see potential in, and there were sequences in the film that I definitely do admit were pretty terrifying. I thought were pretty intense, and I did like the grittiness that this film displayed, and it felt realistic in ways. There were definitely some moments where I was really flinching, because it was very intense, but it's uneven. The film is inconsistent. Those moments don't outweigh the problems that the film has for me, personally. Mainly, I think the film just has a really bad ratio of good tone versus bad tone. And what do I mean by good and bad tone? I mean tone that works for the film, that works for what they're trying to go for, which is good, which is the intense sequences of murder, mutilation, and rape, and all of that. And bad tone, which is stupid, slapstick garbage, which doesn't belong in the film, which I don't understand. A bunch of redneck cops, one of them is played by Martin Cove, and a really inappropriate soundtrack, which really does not fit the film. Other than a couple folk songs, which I didn't mind, The Road to Nowhere, and a few, maybe one other one, but a fucking kazoo. And I'm not kidding. There literally is a scene in this film which happens pretty much right after some pretty intense sequences, where you have these rednecks cops driving around, and you have do I really need to say anything else about how inappropriate that score is? And then you have it again directly. You have a whole sequence which is just done for laughs, which I don't know if it was done to lighten the mood. I heard it was done to make the film more commercial for mainstream audiences. I don't understand the choice. It doesn't make any sense to me. Obviously, it must have worked because the film was a decent hit in 1972, but I just don't fucking get it, and I don't understand it. And may Wes Craven rest in peace, and God rest his soul, but if this was his decision, I can't support it. I can't get behind it. And I'm pretty sure he was a guy who would accept criticism, so I don't think he'd have a problem with what I have to say when it comes to this film and its tone. And so you go from a scene where Phyllis, one of the two girls who were kidnapped by this group of crazies led by David Hess, plays Krug. And I thought David Hess was another positive that I thought, one of the few positives about the film. I thought he did a really great job as Krug Stillo. He's a very charismatic villain, and he's definitely a villain that you love to hate. But that being said, you have an intense sequence where Phyllis is stabbed in the back. She tries to get away. She gets found by Krug and his goons. And then she ends up getting stabbed repeatedly by one of Krug's goons named Weasel. Fred Weasel Podolsky, played by Fred Lincoln. And then after she dies, which is a pretty intense sequence, we cut to a bunch of fucking redneck cops where their cars broke down, and they're trying to find, they have that stupid music. And there's another scene where it's even more ridiculous, where, okay, we not only did that once, which completely broke the tone into a bunch of pieces and made it fractured and made the sequence not nearly as effective as it could be. We then go in, and after our lead, Mary, who is played by Sandra Cassell, She gets raped and then shot in a lake multiple times by Krug. We cut to or the fucking sheriff, the fat fuck sheriff, who's fucking annoying, played by Marshall Anker. Martin Cove is his deputy, delivering the worst performance of his career. One of his earliest performances, but it's still one of the worst performances of his career. Meet up with some African-American woman named Ada, played by Ada Washington, who's driving a chicken truck, and they're trying to get a ride, and then some stupid slapstick humor ensues with them trying to ride on the chicken truck, trying to get the Ada to get the chickens off the truck so they can ride the truck, and she asks them how much they weigh, and I'm like, I don't fucking give a shit. And do you understand how intense of a sequence you just had earlier? This doesn't work. This feels like it's shit that was just thrown in last minute and was just there. I don't know why. The only thing I could think of is to lighten the mood, but it doesn't fucking work. It just ruins a lot of the mood and the atmosphere that the film is trying to build. Can you imagine a film? I'm just trying to think of a good example of a movie with a pretty intense atmosphere that, oh man, I mean, this is a different type of genre of a film, but The Thing has a very intense, John Carpenter's The Thing has a very intense mood and atmosphere. What if it cut the slapstick crap in the middle of the film every now and then after a sequence where the Thing reveals itself and attacks someone in bloody fashion? Dealing with the intense paranoia and atmosphere, and then some guys does a bunch of slapstick, and you hear a fucking soundtrack like this. Do you see the problem that I'm talking about here? I for life of me will never understand that decision that the filmmakers made to insert stupid slapstick and a really stupid country fried lame ass score in this film. I will never understand it. The film even ends with the song with the do. This is after the father just chainsawed Krug to death in front of the cops, and the mother stabbed the female member of the group, Sadie, played by Jeramie Rains, stabbed her in the neck in a pool. And then we have like freeze frame like it's a Saturday fucking afternoon special or some shit on ABC. And I'm like, it just doesn't work. Can you imagine the lyrics? And then the song had lyrics, and it was all innocent and shit. And I don't know if was that the point? Was trying to a contrast between these awful murders and then have this peppy, upbeat music and try to create an atmosphere of creepiness with it. It just doesn't work for me personally. It might work for other people, but to me, it just didn't fit at all. And yeah, it felt like it belonged in a different movie. All the slapstick scenes felt like they belonged in a different movie. There's other elements of the film that feel like they belong in a different movie, like the padding that shows the mother and father of Mary, Cynthia Carr, who plays Estelle Collingwood, and Gaylord St. James, who plays Dr. John Collingwood, and they're like a montage of baking a cake. I just don't. I don't get it. I really don't understand why these sequences are in this film. So that's why this is a hard film for me to talk about, and it's a hard film for me to review because there are things about it that I think work, but there's other shit about it that just doesn't work at all that really hurts the film for me. And yeah, I think I'll just start off with talking about the things that I liked about the film. All the music wasn't bad. I liked The Road to Nowhere. I did like that folksy song. David Hess, I think, sang the song. Stephen Chapman wrote it. And I didn't mind that. I actually liked that song. And there's another song that dealt with being alone that I thought worked for another sequence. But other than that, I really didn't care for the soundtrack at all. Um, I thought David and Hess was great. Like I said earlier, very charismatic villain. It's a villain you definitely love to hate. Um, definitely did root for him to get killed. So that was he was definitely effective in that regard, and he was definitely really creepy. I thought he was a very creepy dude. That's a good way to put it. Good performance because I definitely did fear him. I didn't mind Fred Weasel Podolsky, played by Fred Lincoln. I like the little tick that he had of itching his nose with his knife. I thought for the most part the group of psychopaths or psychos, for the most part, were actually pretty good, decent performances. Jeramie Rain as Sadie. The only one that stood out to me, it wasn't really that great, was Marc Sheffler as Junior Stillo. Just a really, I don't know, just the guy was just there to be a junkie. I think he was just casted because of the way he looked, really, more than anything else. And the other things, I mean, the parents did okay, but there wasn't anything spectacular. Um, that was fun with Steve Miner. Steve Miner had a cameo, I guess, as one of the hippies that taunts the deputies. I wonder if he's the one that flipped them off and said, "I hate cops." Fuck you. And I'm like, I hate these cops too. Thanks, Steve. Maybe they can fucking jog out of the fucking movie. Get the fuck out of this movie because they don't belong in this movie anyway in the first place. But yeah, some of the performances are good. I mean, Sandra Cassell's Mary Collingwood was always there. Lucy Grantham, I thought it did a little bit better job as Phyllis. And so yeah, so that's the positive I can come up with for the acting. Some sequences I definitely thought were definitely effectively chilling and effectively disturbing, and definitely did make my stomach churn. Were the sequence where the psychopaths, after they kidnap the two girls, they bring them into the woods, and they force Phyllis to relieve herself. You know, piss yourself. You know, that was pretty. Yeah, that was pretty messed up. Then they continue and then force Phyllis to make out with her friend Mary and to strip down, and that was very uncomfortable to watch. Very seedy. It's a good way to put it. And it was seedy and sleazy. It was a sleazy movie. It felt like an exploitation film, really. That's what I really think. I don't even think it's a horror film. It's an exploitation movie. I wouldn't even call this a horror movie. I would not really call this a horror film. I'm going to call this an exploitation film. I think Jack Shoulder's Alone in the Dark was more of a horror film to me than Last House on the Left. Last House on the Left to me is an exploitation movie. It's like I Spit on Your Grave. I wouldn't call that a horror film. That's an exploitation movie. It's a rape revenge flick, and this is also in a way a rape revenge movie. It's not really what I would call a horror film, but that's just me personally. There's some horrifying elements in it. There's some horrifying things in it, but I wouldn't consider it a horror film. And there's a lot of other films that have horrifying things in it, but I don't consider them horror movies. Blue Velvet, for instance, has some horrifying sequences in it with Dennis Hopper being high as fuck. I don't call it a horror film. So, a Marathon Man has a really intense torture sequence. Is it safe? Is it safe? I don't call the movie a horror film. So just because a movie has some horrifying sequences in it doesn't make it a horror film in my eyes. But that's just me personally. Anyway, there were actually more than a few scenes other than just that sequence that definitely I thought was effective in terms of delivering some scares and some chills, so to speak. The death scenes I thought were really definitely intense. The death of Phyllis was in the graveyard and she's so close to freedom was pretty harrowing to me. The way that was shot too, when she gets stabbed repeatedly, looks like she's getting fucked by Weasel. That's how I interpreted it anyway. He's fucking her with his knife to death. And the sequence where Mary gets raped That's a pretty rough scene too, where she gets raped, and then she goes into the lake and gets shot to death. That was pretty rough, but that definitely did make me the way that I react to talking about it is the way it made me feel. It made me feel uncomfortable, and that's how a lot of good horror films do. They make you feel that way. That's how they horrify you. That's how they really get under your skin. And those sequences definitely did get. It's still, I think about that shot of just her in the lake, just shot dead, and just I don't know, this filthiness about it, and this disgusting dankness that just is hard to shake. And then you had the whole sequence where the dream sequence, where you see a little bit of what Wes would go to use with his later films, like A Nightmare on Elm Street. Actually, a couple of things that he would go on to use in A Nightmare on Elm Street that were in this film. For one, the dream sequences. There's a dream sequence where Weasel he wakes up, and the mother and father, Mary, are there dressed in surgical gear, and they tell him to open his mouth. They bring out a chisel, and then they break his teeth. And that definitely, that was one of the most horrifying moments in the film to me, and that was just a dream sequence. Another sequence I liked earlier was, and they repeated that again in a dream that the junkie guy had, that he had this dream, Junior, where it was effective, where after Phyllis is dead, they find, they find Mary, and she's cornered by David Hess. She asks David Hess, she's like, "Where's Phyllis? Did she make it?" And David Hess is just like, he doesn't even have to say a word, and he definitely gets under my skin. Very creepy character. Good performance as well. And then when he shakes his head, then you see a shot of her severed arm. Phyllis' severed arm out of one of the thug's pockets, and then it falls to the ground. That was definitely a pretty shocking moment for me. I thought it was a really well set up sequence by Wes. And then the dream sequence is mentioning, and then there's another thing, because I'm going back on the Nightmare on Elm Street sort of precursor elements, where you had the father, Gaylord St. James. He sets up traps in the house, similar to what Nancy would do when she decides to bring Freddy out of the dream world. Sets up traps in her house. So I thought it was interesting to see that. Interesting to see that Wes Craven had elements like Nightmare on Elm Street in the first film he ever directed, in The Last House on the Left. And I didn't mind the sequences at the end when the parents decide to take out the people who killed their daughter, where the calling ones take them out one by one, especially the mother, who you think she's June Cleaver. Here she is biting the guy's dick off. I mean, that was pretty intense. You actually see the dick get bitten off, but you got the point. The father, he was kind of a wimp. He got his ass kicked by David Hess for the most part. Called him a pussy. And he doesn't really show anything until he gets a chainsaw. So I thought the sequence was okay, but they really could have shown more of him using the chainsaw, especially when he killed David Hess. It was nice to see him actually kill David Hess, not just see the redneck police officer, sheriff guy go, "Don't do it," and then zzz, and then blood, and I didn't see anything. Of course, David Hess showed his power, how powerful he is, by making the junkie guy, Junior, shoot himself. You don't really see it, but once again, it gets the point across. Shows you how powerful he is. And Sadie gets killed in the pool pretty mercilessly by the mother. She's the one that does most of the killing. Cynthia Carr, Estelle Collingwood, Mary's mom. So there, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, that's for sure, or a mother scorned. But anyway, yeah, I didn't mind those sequences. And for the most part, I thought Wes Craven's direction for a first-time director was was pretty good. I mean, I've seen worse jobs by really great filmmakers. For example, Francis Ford Coppola's directorial debut in Dementia 13. Really terrible movie. Doesn't look very good. You see that film, you don't even see the potential that Coppola would show with later movies. Um, so there was definitely something there. You could tell that Wes Craven was talented. You could tell that he knew how to set up his shots. Um, but I don't know if it was this particular transfer, which, by the way, is pretty shitty. Transfer on this DVD is pretty shitty, to be honest. I gotta be completely honest about the transfer of that DVD. But it looks like the whole film is at an angle. Like you normally film is straight like this, but it looks like the movie's like this, like barely at a little bit of an angle, almost throughout the entire movie. I don't know if that's just his transfer, or if was an intentional move on Craven's part, but yeah, I don't know if it's just me, but it literally does. In a lot of sequences, it looks like it's like this. The camera's at an angle. But yeah, that's really all I can come up with for pros for the film. Now for cons, fucking shifts in tone. You go from an intense, harrowing tone to might as well have, we just raped a bunch of fucking chicks, and we killed them, and then we dismembered them, and we left them for dead. It just doesn't fucking work. I mean, fuck those redneck cops with the bucket of fried chicken. You could stick it up their ass, make it like a suppository, and then every time they fart, it'll smell like fried chicken. Now, you hold on to that. I don't think anyone is going to get that reference other than people who have seen that crazy clip of Gary Busey from a really bad movie. It was like, you stick some fried chicken up her butt. Anyway, yeah, just go fuck themselves, the bucket of fried chicken, and get the fuck out of this movie because they don't fucking belong in this film. And I also thought the pacing wasn't very good. The film had a pretty slow, turgid, sluggish, dull, boring pace. Didn't really pick up until people started getting chased after and dead. That's pretty much what happened. It didn't pick up until the rape and killing started. And then it still slowed down because I don't give a fuck about these redneck cops. So it just, any sequence of them just killed the film for me in a lot of ways. And yeah, those are some serious, I know, it doesn't seem like it's that many flaws, but those are some serious flaws for me that I just really hurt the film. For me, pacing is a big thing. I was bored for a lot of the movie, especially the first half of the film. And I didn't find it nearly as harrowing or suspenseful or a white knuckle whitening film that never lets us out from under its almost unbearable dramatic tension like Roger Ebert felt. I mean, maybe this was a film that in 1972, if you saw it then, would have more impact. It'd be a film that would be more suspenseful and more intense. But since I've seen so many films after this that have been 10 times more suspenseful and 10 times more intense, that it just feels tame in some ways. It really does. It feels tame in comparison to films that have came out after it. It doesn't feel like it's that intense. I mean, there's those sequences of the rape and the revenge that are intense, but I've seen even more intense rape and rape sequences. I saw a more intense, disturbing rape sequence in the Savage Streets, for instance. It just, the film, those sequences work, but they end up not carrying the film because of the stupid redneck cops, because of the stupid slapstick, because of the change in tone, which completely screws the film for me. And I'm a huge tone guy. If the tone is not right, that really unravels the entire production for me personally. It's like you pull the one thread out and it just makes the whole thing fall apart. And that's what uneven tone does for a film for me. I feel the same way about this film in terms of tone as I did with Invaders from Mars remake that Tobe Hooper did, where it didn't decide pick a tone and stick with it. It didn't. It was a comedy at one point, and then it was a serious horror sci-fi movie. It can't have both. You can't have it both ways. You're either a comedy or you're a horror movie. With this, you're either a slapstick, southern fried comedy, or you're a intense rape revenge flick. You can't have both. You can't have both because they don't mix well, and they don't make a very delectable or delicious combination. It really leaves a bad taste in your mouth. So, yeah, that's my opinion on Last House on the Left. I really don't know what else to say about the film, other than if I was to rate it out of 5 stars. I'm giving it 2. I'm giving it 2 out of 5. I did not, at the end of the day, I didn't care for this film. I'm not really a big fan of rape revenge movies to begin with. I only really like Savage Street because it's got some badass one-liners and Linda Blair kicks some ass. It's got a great soundtrack. Last House on the Left is, I feel the same way. I like it more than I Spit on Your Grave, but the payoff wasn't nearly as good as I thought it was going to be. He sets up all these traps, and some of them are never even used in the film. Like, what about the stuff that he put on the floor? Like, he put some white shit on the floor. It doesn't do anything. I guess, was that the stuff that was supposed to electrocute the guy? I don't know. Kind of reminded me of Home Alone, to be honest, where David Hess grabs the doorknob and it's electrocuted. And it just, you have the chainsaw, but he never does anything with it. You don't see the chainsaw kill, you go through David Hess. You don't see that. And it just, yeah, lack of a good comeuppance. I mean, lack of a good payoff. I mean, other than, I mean, the deaths of Weasel and Sadie were pretty effective. But David Hess is the main guy, and you don't even see him die. So, I mean, that was pretty disappointing. The shifts in tone, which don't fucking work. Stupid score, which even had a stupid kazoo. And stupid fucking redneck cops. And that just doesn't, I don't like any of that. And the pacing issues, and overall, it's just a film I honestly didn't care for. I am perfectly fine with never watching this film again. I will keep this for the features, because there's quite a few features on here. But other than that, I wish the film was more serious. And interestingly enough, that's what the original intention was. The original screenplay was written as Night of Vengeance, and it was meant to be a harder film, a graphic, hardcore film that Craven wrote in 1971. And all the actors and crew were committed to making it as such. They were committing to filming the movie as a intense, graphic, hardcore movie. But then, after shooting began, the hard decision was made to edit down to a much softer film, which was an absolute mistake. It was a huge mistake on their part, in my opinion. And they came up with different ideas for the title. They thought, oh, maybe we could call it something else, or like Sex Crime of the Century, or Krug and Company, or The Men's Room, simply because one poster showed a men's bathroom, and none of those titles were successful. And then someone came up with the title Last House on the Left, along with the infamous tagline, avoid feigning, keep repeating, it's only a movie. It's only a movie advertising campaign. Which in actuality, that advertising campaign had actually been used before by H.G. Lewis for the 1964 splatter film Color Me Blood Red and William Castle's Strait Jacket the following year. So that wasn't even that original. So something that was attributed to this film, and still is attributed to this film to this day, as being a really memorable thing about the movie, the infamous ad campaign, wasn't even their own ad campaign. It wasn't even something they came up with on their own either. They just borrowed it from William Castle and H.G. Lewis. And speaking of H.G. Lewis, there's some H.G. Lewis movies that are bloodier and more, I don't know, definitely more shocking in a lot of ways than Last House on the Left. I think the most shocking thing about it was to see June Cleaver and Pop Cleaver, these really well-together, innocent mother and father, to murder the killer so brutally. I think that's the big thing. Wasn't this a rape? because there'd been plenty of that in other movies even before this film came out. Wasn't really the murder, because I've been done before in other films, H.G. Lewis movies, a bunch of other stuff. I think that was the groundbreaking aspect of it, and I do got to give credit to that. I thought, if I get one more pro before I go, it would be, yeah, I thought for the most part, Craven's script, minus the softer shit, which he probably was forced to add in, the slapstick stupid shit, or that was shot after the fact, after the script was already written. Seems like it was stuff that was just shot on the fly, and I would totally believe if it was. But the moments where it's supposed to be a hardcore exploitation flick, it works. And I do like that aspect of the innocent mother and father being just as brutal, if not more, than the killers. But that's as far as I can go with this film. That's as far as my pros go for The Last House on the Left. To me, the shifts in tone, the slapstick humor that doesn't fit, the pacing, that's what kills the film for me. But anyway, it was a good start for Wes, though. And he would go on to do a lot more effective and better films as the years went on. But he would also have more growing pains, as to be expected from any filmmaker, especially a filmmaker who quit his job as a teacher and decided to become a director. So, not bad for an ex-teacher, that's for sure. But anyway, I don't know what else to say except thank you for watching my review of The Last House on the Left, and I will see you guys later. See ya.